Okay, so we looked at the influence of culture and how that has affected the evolution of intimate relationships. We looked at the influence of experience, and now we're going to look at the influence of individual differences. Now, having said everything I've already said, and having read this chapter in the textbook and digested it and understanding it, we're all still individuals. No two people, even two siblings in the same family, even twins of the same sex in the same family who share a room will not have the exact same experiences and characteristics, and thus will not be exactly the same in their personal relationships. Have you ever been talking to your siblings about something that occurred when you were kids and you discover they have a completely, totally different recollection? That's because you're both individuals. I'm one of four kids, I'm the youngest, and this has happened more than once. I'll look at my brothers and ask them what they're talking about because their memory is in no way related to my memory about a past experience. And in their relationships, individual people can demonstrate variation because of their sex, gender, personalities, and self-esteem. These are all individual differences. So if we look at sex difference, this is one kind of individual difference. Are males and females really that different? Do we really approach relationships and think about them in a completely different way? Actually, no. Males and females are not total opposites. We're more alike than we are dissimilar. It may not feel that way sometimes. And as you know, there's a ton of jokes about how different men and women are. We tend to make fun of each other, but males and females, for the most part, are very similar. Are some men and women more different than they are alike? Well, people buy into certain stereotypes about the differences between men and women, which often support the idea that we are. But the majority of us are just average, plain, boring, nothing really unexpected, average people. I like that your text uses the example of height as an analogy for this because it's a really simple, straightforward, and easy to understand example. Sure, there's some people that are super tall or super short, but the majority are somewhere in the average realm. Now, your textbook has 3 graphs in it to demonstrate how minimal the differences are for men and women regarding sex, whether it's attitude towards sex, amount of interest in it, age at first intercourse, that kind of thing. And you'll see there's no huge differences. Men tend to have sex for the first time at a slightly younger age. They tend to masturbate more often. They tend to have a slightly higher sex drive, and they tend to be more okay with casual sex. But these aren't great big glaring differences. The differences between men and women regarding sex are actually pretty modest. So if that's the case, if all research indicates that males and females are actually pretty similar when it comes to issues of sexuality, then why do these stereotypes that they're really different continue to exist? If you look at a specific example of one of the stereotypes that men have this much higher sex drive and thus are much more interested in sexual activity all the time, that it's always front and center of their mind. Think of the joke that a woman often has to say, hey buddy, my eyes are up here because he's more interested in her chest, that sort of thing. Then on the other hand, we have this stereotype that women always want to talk. They want to snuggle. They're more interested in affection. That annoying question, what are you thinking? Why is this stereotype so pervasive? Well, I can't really give you an answer for that, but I can tell you it's largely false. I could go into a whole long explanation of how this stems in great part from the way society was historically speaking, with how women were always supposed to be asexual and how that ties to religion and all of that, but don't panic, I won't. What we're focused on for the purposes of this course and this discussion is that this is just a very pervasive stereotype that's almost 100% false. The stereotype allows for funny TV shows and movies and jokes, but it's largely false. Another individual difference is gender differences. And so just looking at this picture for the men with Sylvester Stallone Had a huge discussion the other day because I've never seen the original Rambo movie. So apparently, the person I was talking to said that my cultural education is not complete until I see Rambo. Whatever. Okay, gender differences are something that's different. Remember, gender refers specifically to the social and psychological distinctions that are created by your culture or your upbringing. How you're socialized to be male or female. One of my absolute favorite topics. I really enjoy talking about this and trying to get students to consider the basis for them viewing certain things as expected or okay if you're a guy or a girl. Why? Where do these ideas come from? Why does pretty much everyone base so much of their thoughts and behaviors and expectations and their life on gender roles and gender norms and all of that? Everything. The clothes you wear, how you style your hair, how you speak, sometimes the words you use, the toys you were given to play with as a kid, maybe the courses you chose in school. The term gender role refers to patterns of behavior that are culturally expected of men and women. What it means to be considered masculine or feminine. If we were in a classroom right now, I would ask students to tell me, just off the top of their head, what they think of when they think of the term masculinity. And I would probably get terms like strong, tough, assertive, independent, being dominant. These are referred to as instrumental traits, meaning they are more task-oriented and they're more commonly associated with men. If I asked for terms associated with femininity, I'd probably get terms like soft, sensitive, warm, delicate, affectionate. These are referred to as expressive traits, focused on social and emotional skills, and these are more commonly associated with women. And in a classroom, my first question after this would be, why? Why do we as a society, and you as an individual, automatically associate these particular terms with being masculine or feminine? If all I did was switch the terms so that masculinity was described as soft and sensitive and delicate, and being feminine was described as strong and tough and assertive, why wouldn't that still fit? Because everybody is socialized from the time they're born by all of the people in their environment, as well as every other part of society, regarding what it means to be masculine or feminine. Kids learn at a really early age what it means to be a boy or a girl in a society through a whole variety of ways. And this continues throughout their life. So, I mean, the activities they're expected to be involved in, the opportunities provided or not provided to them as a girl or a boy, what they're encouraged or discouraged from doing, overt behaviors that are praised or covert suggestions about what is appropriate, how you're guided by your parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, grandparents, babysitters, daycare providers, teachers, your coaches, television, music, other forms of media, and everything else. All of these contribute to children experiencing the process of gender role socialization. And that is when you learn how to be a little boy or learn how to be a little girl. If you're male, these are the behaviors and attitudes you should have. And if you're female, these are the behaviors and attitudes you should have. Sorry if I'm a bit disjointed there. I had to pause it while one of my dogs barked at a leaf falling in the lawn or something. So this is gender role socialization. And I would argue that it's not just difficult, but it's impossible for a child to grow to adulthood without experiencing some form of gender role socialization. Even today, in our modern, politically correct world, we are all subject to gender bias and gender stereotyping at various points. Now, a lot of people feel that girls and boys are no longer socialized differently because our society is so much more aware, we're so much more enlightened than people were in the past. You know, equality between the sexes has progressed so much that this kind of thing is almost non-existent at this point. And I would agree in part, absolutely progress has been made. However, the vast majority of social scientists and others that conduct research in this area would disagree. Our society might not be as rigid in defining gender roles as we were historically speaking, but it still takes place in very subtle ways all the time. And I don't think you really need academic research to indicate this to you. Even at birth as infants, the way we are treated is often, if not always, dependent on our sex. What color clothes you're dressed in. Hospitals still often give girls pink blankets while boys get blue blankets. What name you're given usually has gender connotations to it. One study of differential socialization experiences looked at mother-infant interaction during the first 3 years of life. And it noted that mothers tended to stimulate male infants significantly more than female infants and to arouse them to a higher activity level. Oh, look at how strong you are. Let's do your muscles. Let's get your muscles getting big and move you around. So they even talk to them differently. Even when you're infants, you're dressed in gender specific colors and your different behavior is expected from you. These are just very small ways, very subtle ways that children internalize parental messages regarding gender at an early age. You're so pretty, or you're so tough. And as their infants begin to grow, in general, parents seem to almost subconsciously encourage their sons and daughters to participate in sex-typed activities. So little girls playing with dolls and pretending to be a mom or to cook in their play kitchen or to dress up their Barbie. And little boys playing with trucks and given toy tool sets and racetracks and generally encouraged to be more active. So let's look at that. Differences in toys given to children. Barbie is the usual classic example of a toy that represents a role model for little girls, while little boys stereotypically like cars and trucks. And you might say, but Jennifer, that's what he likes. It isn't because he's a boy. It's not because I'm pushing anything on him. It's just because what he's interested in. And I would respond to that by asking, why is it that so many boys are interested in stereotypical boys' toys like cars and trucks, while so many girls are interested in stereotypical girls that are pink and frilly? And notice on the slide here, the top picture, my cleaning trolley, the little circle on the left of the picture says girls only. Boy, would I have something to say about that in that store. Now, some research has found a significant connection between children's toy preferences being related to parental sex typing and more general adult sex typing in general. That sounds like a mouthful, so let me explain what I mean. In other words, if you have dolls that are supposed to be dressed up pretty and get their hair done and look after the baby dolls, that sort of thing, as opposed to having girl dolls that are construction workers and, being really active, then it's going to influence the way you view adult women in the real world in the same way. In other words, what you have around you indicates to you what the world should be like. Simple sentence, and it's a great sentence. It's actually one I came up with myself, not from the textbook. What you have around you indicates to you what the world should be like, whether that's in terms of gender or race or ethnicity or anything. So if you're a little girl and you're presented over and over and over with examples from TV shows and commercials and movies and music and videos and magazines and other toys and clothes and decorations for girls' rooms, eventually this all combines to teach little girls what gender or sex typing is appropriate and expected for adult women. And the same for boys. Huge, massive criticism of Barbie. Yep, Barbie can now have various professions, but they're still in pretty clothes, all dolled up. There continues to be differences in how children are dressed in terms of colors. There continues to be differences in terms of how children's rooms are decorated, in terms of what color. Something as simple as color has gendered connotations. A Korean artist created an exhibition a few years ago called the Pink and Blue Project. And for this artist, his normal medium is photography. So this was a photographic series exploring the links between cultural preferences, gender socialization and identity through the bedrooms and belongings of various little boys and girls. This occurred in San Francisco at the Children's Museum of the Art. So this is showing us how socially ingrained color preferences are for boys and girls. Is this an extreme example? Yeah, it's an extreme example, but it's also an effective example. It makes a point. So you see the picture on the right with the little boy, Thomas. I personally have always found the face of Thomas the Tank Engine to be really scary. It's always scared me. He wasn't around when I was a kid, but thankfully my son never got into Thomas the Tank Engine because I always find the face just freaky. So it's pretty widely accepted that by about age 2, children realize if they're a girl or a boy, not just physically, but that they're a boy or a girl socially, and that by about age 2, they begin to integrate these social differences. By age 5 or 6, they've really begun to learn their gender, and they've really begun to learn the associated behaviors that go along with their gender and what's expected of them because of their gender. And as a side note, in retrospect, adults will report that around age 5 or 6, they realized that they were not heterosexual if they were in fact not heterosexual. You could spend your entire university career studying this. That is why it's possible to earn a degree in gender studies. So we're certainly not going to be able to get into all the facets of this in this tiny little snippet in this course. We, meaning society as a whole, tend to view masculinity and femininity, task-oriented traits, and expressive traits as being mutually exclusive, one or the other with no overlap. But that's not true. Boys and girls, men and women, are not complete opposites in regard to their gender so that they fall neatly into one category or the other. Instead, both exhibit varying levels of both traits. And this is not a new area of research, a new area of study. This is something that has been studied for decades. So again, what you have around you indicates to you what the world should be like, what is considered normal. Now, there's nothing wrong with instrumental traits, and there's nothing wrong with expressive traits, nothing at all. And all studies indicate that people who are happy and healthy possess both. And studies indicate that when asked who they would prefer for a partner, both sexes say they would prefer a partner that possesses both. So no, most women do not say, I'd prefer to have like this really hyper masculine man. And most men do not say, I'd prefer to have this really, really hyper feminine woman. Most people would prefer their partner to be somewhere in the middle, more androgynous, meaning a mix of both. Now, I can't give you an exact recipe. So, I'd like 1 part affection, 1 part assertiveness, and half a part emotional, but generally a mix of both. And isn't it interesting, as indicated in your text, that when a man is primarily instrumental, with little or no expressive traits, his partner is chronically less satisfied in their relationship. So, we have all these masculine stereotypes in books and movies and on TV of this hyper masculine man who's super tough and assertive and who doesn't become emotional. But in reality, a man like that will have a partner that's not really happy. But he can't go too far because if he is too expressive in his traits, then that is often considered negatively. On the other hand, the stereotypical, totally passive, really emotional woman who's always subversive is also not something that's considered positively in real life. Yet if a woman is in fact really assertive, that is also generally viewed negatively, whether that is in work or her personal life. For a woman, even now, being assertive is often viewed as pushy. Not all the time, but often. I'd say more than men. So it almost feels like we need an instruction book at this point, don't we? Be masculine, but not too much. And still be affectionate and expressive, but don't head too far in that direction either. And then for women, be feminine, but not in too much in a stereotypical way. And don't hesitate to demonstrate your instrumental traits by being assertive and tough, but not too much because you don't want to be perceived as pushy and picky. And I wish that there was research I could refer you to from the text that dealt with the same issue in terms of same-sex relationships And unfortunately, there isn't. So I do want you to be aware that that is something that's lacking here. So individual differences, we're still focused on individual differences, and we're looking at personality. That is an individual difference. You don't need me to tell you, or for the text to tell you, that everybody has their own personality, their own little quirks and peculiarities that are specific to them. Of course, your personality is going to affect your intimate relationships, not just in terms of who you have a romantic relationship with or who you're close friends with, but in terms of how you interact in those relationships and maintain them. For example, I know somebody who shall remain nameless, who has a reputation for being high maintenance, which we tease her about, and it's very true. And I don't mean high maintenance in terms of, having to look after her appearance a lot. What I mean by high maintenance is that having a friendship with them often requires a lot of attention, a lot of effort. They have to talk about something 20 times before they will completely let it drop, even if it's something really minor. They tend to always like things their way, no matter what is going on, and their way of approaching things is often viewed as the only way. Now, don't get me wrong, they are kind and have a heart of gold, but the rest of us joke that, I could never live with her. She would drive me insane. And we also joke, I don't know how her boyfriend does it. He must just tune her out a good part of the time. It's simply part of her personality. She is the way she is for whatever reason. And of course, her personality affects the relationship she has with others, just like your personality affects your relationships, and the same with me, and the same with everybody else. How do you develop your personality? Where does it come from? A little from genetics, some from socialization, some from your experiences or a lack thereof, and all of this melds together to form your personality. And again, I can't give you an exact recipe. It's not, okay, it's, about 20% from how you were raised and 25% from past relationships. And other than genetics, everything is open to revision. So although we may like to sarcastically say that it isn't possible for somebody to change, it isn't possible to teach an old dog new tricks, actually it is. Have you ever made the observation that your personality just doesn't fit with somebody else? Have you ever said that you just don't like to be around somebody because you don't like the way they are, or that you're just too different? Well, generally what you're saying is that their personality and your personality do not fit well together. But as I said, this is not static. It's not absolutely fixed. It can change over time. And your textbook provides a really good example of this when it notes that being with somebody who is conscientious becomes more important for people as they get older. And I don't know how old you are, but as you get older, this will become more important. As you get older, being with somebody who is more conscientious, being around people who are conscientious, will be more important to you than being around people who are really outgoing, for example. Your text refers to what's known as the 5 core personality traits, also known as the 5-factor model. And these 5 core personality traits are being open to experiences, extroversion, conscientiousness, agreeableness, and eroticism. And I'm not going to review them in detail because they're very clear in the text. When we go through the text, if there's something that's just, to me, seems crystal clear, you don't need me to review it with you. I doubt you've actually used these terms in conversation to describe somebody. I know I haven't. And look at my job. But we've all still referred to them in assessing others using different terms in some way. And it may seem like a really simple, straightforward way of classifying personality traits, and it totally is. But the 5-factor model is also applied in a variety of ways, looking at how they affect mental disorders, personality disorders, a whole bunch of things. Now, note in your text that at no point are neurotic personality traits considered positive, which I think we can all agree with.